The season winding down at Road Atlanta is no stranger to sports car racers. This place is used to hearing engines reverberate through the crisp fall air. But narrowing it down to nothing but Porsches will be music to the ears of most. Let's see if we end this symphony with a crescendo as we get ready to watch PCA Pro GT3 Cup Series, sponsored by Porsche. I am Joe Peak, and with me in the booth is Michael Johnson. Brian Bauer is our producer behind the scenes, and he's using cameras provided by Dougie Beard. Let's talk again about this new series in PCA Sim Racing because it's a bit different from our usual series and events. First off, there are two classes, PCA Pro and Pro. The difference being that PCA Pro drivers are those who have had to earn their way into tonight's race by their solid performance in PCA Sim Racing Series 1 through 8. The top 10 in Series 8 points are the latest to join the ranks. Then, on the other side, the pro drivers are just that. These are the drivers who may have raced sim racing, but they're also members of professional racing teams who are running the GT3 Cup 992 car in 2022. Teams include 311 RS Motorsports, ACI Motorsports, Apoapsis Performance Solutions, Eagles Canyon Racing, Hardpoint Motorsports, and others. So, it will certainly be fun to watch it, as it has been all season long, how they face off here. And we of course have Michael Johnson, as I mentioned, back with us once again. And Michael, I heard you talking some stories about having put some laps around this place. I got to think this 992 car around here is going to be a treat.
It is a treat and a handful at the same time. This track is incredibly unforgiving, and I am just amazingly fortunate to have cut my teeth in cars on this track way back when in the 80s. So I love this track, and I hate it at the same time, but I appreciate what it taught me and how it set my mind for becoming a professional race car driver. So yeah, this track is absolutely amazing. We have some fantastic sections through here where passing opportunities abound. It's only 2.5 miles long, right? Just a touch over 4 kilometers, 12 turns here, and it is just full of action. There's so much stuff that goes on here. So we're gonna have I would say one of the most exciting races of the year is gonna happen right now.
Yeah, no doubts. And as we're just getting, it looks like Corey Friedman among the first in this warm-up after our first race we've already had. We have to remember, this is the second of the evening, last of the season as well. We'll get to see some action out there as the 014 starts to take off. We also have another special guest that we've had a few times over the course of things. Ross Bentley returns once again. Ross, we're glad to have you here from Speed Secrets and the Sim Racer Academy. And I mean, tell us the secrets about this place, because it seems like the Porsche around a track that has a lot of high speed and technical sections is going to provide a very interesting challenge.
Well, I don't know if there was any secrets, but what I do know, and I agree with Michael, this is, I believe, one of, if not the most challenging racetracks in North America. I mean, it's got a little of everything. It's got these super fast corners, it's got the S's, it's got uphill, it's got downhill, it's got a tight hairpin, and that big long straightaway into a massive braking zone where, you know, you've got, it's probably one of the best passing zones or passing opportunities at any track in the country. And so I'm excited about this race. This is going to be really fun.
I am as well. And I mean, with your experience around here, would you like to talk us around a lap on board with Corey in the 014 car?
Yeah. As he comes onto the front straightaway here, turn 12 is flat, near flat, and just about anything. Turn 1, little dab of the brakes, turn in, and you count on the compression of the hill here, catching the car, and then you're hard on the throttle coming up. You come into the approaching turn 3 blind. You pop over the hill, pound the curb, apex curb on the inside here, and then hold your foot flat to the floor, down through the S's, maybe a little breathe just to get the car to turn in, and then down here, faster than you think you can. Turn 5 is all about the exit speed coming up this hill. It's a corner that is faster than it looks. And same thing with turn 6 as you approach here because of the banking that's in this corner. You throw it in here and just kind of let the car stick, knowing that there isn't much of a straightaway, but then you got to get it hauled down into this tight, slow turn 7 that leads onto the back straight. And why turn 7 is so difficult is you've been going through all these fast corners and really flowing all this speed, and then you got to be patient and you got to slow it down and get the car turned onto the back straightaway so you can get this big launch on the back straight. Coming down into the brake zone for turn 10, it's all about how late you can brake, get the car turned in, but also set up to get a good run out of 10B here, because it's actually leads almost to turn 1, almost flat, because turn 12 in most cars is just maybe almost flat. And it's a roller coaster ride around here.
Yeah, I've heard it described that way quite a bit over the years, and I can see why from the onboards and even getting to drive it here in the sim, as we're now watching Kostnak and see just how tough it is as he struggles even with turn 3, which has definitely caught lots of drivers out. But turn 5 is the one I'm most concerned about. I feel like that's a bit of an underrated corner in all of racing, because I've seen so many accidents in the races I've covered here, Ross, and usually they're not small accidents.
No, they're not. Usually what ends up happening is a driver runs out of road, gets up onto that curbing on the right-hand side, the exit curbing, makes a little bit too big a correction, and the car spins back across the track into the wall on the left-hand side. And that's probably, when I hear somebody has crashed at Road Atlanta, I say, oh, turn 5, spun to the left, hit the wall, and yeah, 9 times out of 10, that's it.
Yeah, it certainly seems like it. And Michael, I know you two were definitely having some fun a little bit earlier, trading some stories. I did know about the old version of this track with the dip. I mean, it seems like such a trade-off, because, yeah, that seems like scary fun. But what do you guys think about the added passing zone? Was that an improvement or not?
For me, it was an improvement. The difficulty to pass here in the earlier sections of the track, it was always kind of you really had to know what you were doing, and you had to play the mind game to make the other person make a mistake, but hopefully not that turn 5 mistake. Because if we talk a little bit about turn 5, that's an interesting place, because you're on curbing with your right side tires, and then you might graze that inside curbing. I really don't recommend it, but yeah, sometimes things happen and you go skittering across the pavement there, and you get that curbing on the exit side, and it causes the cars to be in a really difficult place. And you have to have an absolute master at setting up cars when you set the car up to go through there. I don't know, what kind of advice do you have, Ross, for getting the car set up properly to handle that kind of beating that you get going over the curbing and then skittering across the pavement there?
Well, I think that is the key, is you've got to have the car compliant, and yet I think from a driver's perspective, the biggest thing is you have to have commitment, because as you hit these curbs, even the apex curb at 3, but this exit curb at 5, if you're a little bit hesitant with the throttle, it's almost like the car is saying, come on, give me something here. And the car sometimes will just not respond the way you want. But when a driver is fully committed, and that's when you see, I'd say, the difference between the drivers that are getting that last hundredth or tenth out of the car, they have that commitment, and they just fully commit to the throttle. The car pounds that curb, and again, hopefully, I agree, you have to have the car set up well, but the driver's got to have that commitment to hold their foot into it and trust that it's going to stick. Because, again, a little hesitation, a little bit of overcorrection, and it's going to cost you.
I see people keeping too much wheel in when they go through there. And I was having a conversation with some of the current royalty of racing. We were joking how people think the steering wheel is for turning the car, and we're using that exact turn as an example of, no, the steering wheel starts the turn, but that's all it's going to do. If you still have wheel in when you're going through there, you're in for a scary ride over to that wall.
I love that approach of the steering wheel is a suggestion. Yeah, I'm going to suggest we turn here, but everything else I'm going to do with my feet. It's with the balance of the braking and the throttle that makes the difference.
Well, guys, man, it has just been a joy having you here all season, Ross, and I can't thank you enough. And I hope we get to have you back, because especially hearing you and Michael talk about your years in racing and the experience has just been a joy for me. So I can't thank you enough, and I hope we get to talk to you some more in the future here on the channel.
I hope so too. This is great racing.
That was Ross Bentley from Speed Secrets, and that's going to take us to the starting grid, of course, for this last race of the season. Wyatt Gooden, who was on the pole for the first race, ran away with it. He's going to do likewise again as Cameron Martineau will start in second. Chris Pies and Lee Peterson will be on row two. All four of them will be in the Pro class. PCA Pro, distinct line this time, you can see, starting in the fourth position. No, excuse me, it was Chris Pies, Cameron Martineau, and Chris Walsh. I was looking at the wrong screen here, as Arthur Chan will start from fifth. Jordan Dyer will be P6. It's Rich Minkler starting P8 today, and Jim Huth in the ninth position. After that, rounding out the top 10 here, Michael, it'll be Chris Braun.
Looking at P11, we've got Joe Stiefel there, alongside Lynn Wilson. Ed Eisenring coming up in P13. Derwin Costin, I always stumble on his name. I'll get it right one of these days. Kostanak, Grant Talke, and then Jacob Schum. Rick Reinsberg, Trey Drawhorn, Travis Brody, and Robert Rose bring out your top 20. And I don't believe Corey is going to take the field on this one, or actually maybe he is.
I do see him out there, so it looks like he has been able to get out there, and Travis Brody was a maybe as well. So they are thankfully both on the track. So they're going to go single file, and then they'll double back up when they come back around to be released, for the green flag. Before we get there, just a reminder about the social media, of course, about the PCA, because their social media offers in-race reports, breaking news, and announcements through Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. To subscribe, key in the platform name and add /PCA Sim Racing. Definitely keep up with that. All kinds of cool stuff constantly going on in this community. I love all the opportunities they provide of drivers of every level of skills. But this is going to be the top skills, and you were referring to that a bit before the show as well, Michael. The level that they're racing at and the difficulty in trying to make overtakes here past some of these guys is probably going to be upped even more.
It certainly is. When you look at the quality of these drivers, the skill level, and I don't just mean your top four, your top five, I mean all the way through the field. The quality of drivers here is just absolutely stunning, and you're going to see really nice moves made throughout the field, things that have been set up to not 2 or 3 corners, but 2 or 3 laps ahead, because you really do have to have that grandmaster chess player level when you're racing with folks like these. I did go out and do some ghost laps with these guys, and ghost laps, it's easy to pass. You just drive through them. But when you're actually on the track with them and it's not a ghost car, you have to pay attention. You really have to plan so far in advance and get into their head just the right way.
Looks like the only driver we're going to be missing is Lynn Wilson, unfortunately, in the 006. Now, interestingly, while Wyatt Gooden ran away, Martineau and Pies had a huge battle that ended down here with contact on the last lap, Michael. They seemed to be pretty good spirits after the race, even with that contact, and enjoyed the race. Do you think they remember that? Do you think this is going to carry on into race 2?
Without a doubt, it's too fresh in their minds. It's definitely going to do it.
All right, as the green flag is out and Wyatt Gooden is on the loud pedal, it's the last one of the season, and he is off like a shot. Is this going to give him the chance to try and run away with another victory and sweep the evening? As behind them, it looks like Martineau and Walsh are going to go single file, double wide for Arthur Chan and Jordan Dyer through that first corner. Always tricky on the first lap, and especially, Michael, here into turn 3.
Yeah, turn 3, you've got to hammer that curb. That curb right there that you just watched that green and black car go across. If you don't get that cut, you are severely reducing your speed and your ability to get down here through turn 5 into these S's.
Up into turn 5. Will we have any casualties on this first lap? Just kicking up dust in the background. Someone going quite wide up and over the hill, but thankfully keeping it together, and I don't see any incidents. So we survived the first lap through turn 5, but now on to the backstretch. This might be important for Chris. He wants to get into that slipstream of the 18.
Yeah, that dust up we saw back there coming out of turn 5, that's exactly what Ross and I were talking about that commitment, keeping your foot in the pedal and just going for it. But right now, talk about going for it. Wyatt is just pulling away like he did last time. He's got about 3/4 of a second pulled out here, little less than last time. So I wonder if Chris and Cameron are biding their time and trying to hold on to him a little bit with Chris Walsh sitting right in behind them.
Oh, we've had a big accident at the back. Multiple cars coming together. Thankfully, nobody with a serious one. Only car that we have majorly off is Schum, and then it looks like Eisenring is a little slow. Oh, he might actually have some serious damage the way that he has come to almost a crawl now. So let's see if we can try and break down. This happens often on the first lap. People get eager into this chicane here, Michael.
Yeah, this is going to get exciting as we go too wide here. This is a really tough place. Oh, got a little bit wide on the outside. I think there was a little lack of communication between the drivers there. It's hard to see in the sim, but when he got out a little bit wide there on that right side, so he was the outside of that first corner of 10A, and then coming back around, that little touch of grass is what ended up causing that crash.
That was Eisenring, unfortunately, that looked like he started in the 929. He got some of the worst damage. Kosnak and Schum are both in pit lane. No spare car in this series, so they just have to suffer with that damage, hope that they can get back out on track and enjoy a few laps before we say goodbye to the Pro Series for this season. Meanwhile, Martineau did not forget. He is already on top of Chris Pies and sends it a little deep down into the chicane. Behind him, Chris Walsh is giving close watch, though.
Yeah, Chris is doing a good job holding on to these guys. He watched the last race, I'm sure, or at least saw a little bit of that last race and saw how they were fighting. So that's the perfect place for him to be, P4 right now, because he knows those guys are going to battle and he's going to jump when the time is right.
Bad news for Eisenring. On top of his damage, he's been given a black flag for that incident, it appears. So stewards did not like the look of that one. They're expected to control their cars out here, and even if he does get back out on course, he's going to have an extra bit of sting to that as they come across turn 5 once again. Walsh really is pushing it and continuing to just use every inch of the track around this circuit. Let's see what the backstretch brings for them.
Yeah, Gooden is really checking out here. He's almost 1.8 seconds out in front of these guys, and that's a little bit too far to take advantage of any type of draft. But between Pites, Martineau, and Walsh, this is a very tight race, and it's not a good place to be for Chris Pites. He's right up front of this, and these guys are really getting a nice toe off of him. Now as we watch him coming down here into the braking zone, this is where time gets really compressed. How well are you braking for that 10A corner? This is where you really have to be super positive about how much brake pressure you want to put in there. No ABS on these cars, so it can get pretty hairy if you're not careful.
So we watch from on board the 003 down around the final corner. He's chasing on Grant Talkie, who thankfully looks like he's gotten some of his connection issues he was having in race 1 sorted out, and he's looking a lot more solid. We jump a little farther up once again, and we've got Ross joining us in the booth once more. Ross, those first few laps certainly saw a bit of action, but what are your initial thoughts on how these guys have handled the start here?
My initial reaction is I'm impressed with how great the racing is and how clean it is. Yeah, there was an incident on that first lap, but I think, as Michael pointed out, that's probably a visibility issue. And certainly wasn't nobody did anything on purpose there. So great racing so far, nice clean racing, and this looks exciting.
Unfortunately, looks like Grant Talkie has become our first victim of the second race in turn 5, and he has retired the car. He's officially done after that one. Oh, as we go side by side, and Pies is not able to hold off Martineau. Unfortunately for him, Michael, he's already got a threat from behind with Walsh.
Yeah, Walsh, just like I was saying, he was sitting there in the catbird seat waiting for these guys to battle, and it's working for him. But look right behind him. We've got Arthur Chan trying to sneak up into this too. Arthur Chan's the first of our PCA Pro. So we have the Pro and the PCA Pros we were talking about, but Arthur Chan is in a really nice position here. He's leading the PCA Pro class, and he could get up into the mixture here with these 4.
And you saw on your screen, that was Walsh going by Pies, so that's 2 positions down very quickly. Ross, we sometimes hear about some tracks being momentum tracks. Does this seem like one of those, and maybe that's what's hurting the 14 there?
It certainly is a momentum track up, through 1 through 5, and then it's all about this launch onto the back straightaway. And it's, I'm looking forward to see how this is going to settle out here with the drafting.
Yeah, and it's going to be a nice slipstream for Arthur Chan, as we heard Michael talking about getting himself inserted into this, and he's about 3/10 back. Is that going to be enough to try and do anything as they pick up speed? Already 165 before they hit the brakes, and then it's down into the chicane. Nope, the answer is not close enough, Michael.
Yeah, had he gotten a good launch and nobody had been in front of Chris Walsh, then he probably could have gotten right up on his tail, maybe a little side by side. But Chris Pites in that case. But I gotta say, Chris Pites is one good driver, and I have seen him come off corners that in ways that just astounded me. I wanted to put the power down like he was, and I couldn't do it. So yeah, if anybody's going to come off that corner like Ross was talking about, Chris is the guy to do it.
Knows exactly where that grip is on that Porsche 992 as they come up through turn 5 once again, but still Chan keeps the pressure on him, and he looks a lot closer this time by. He just needs to get that exit, needs to try and stick with that green and black 14. Let's see if turn 7 will go a little bit better for him this time as they all weave onto the back stretch, and it doesn't look all that much better to me.
I think he could have used a little more of that curving there on the exit. I like to use that curving, especially in the sim. You've got tons of grip on that. I thought he could have gone out a bit more and maybe carried an extra half a mile per hour or so. That would have helped him get a little bit closer.
Winkler looking forwards ahead to Jordan Dyer just in front of him, little off the apex there. That's going to pinch off the second part of the chicane, and you can see all the ground that he loses immediately out of that one. Up ahead of him, there we go again with Chris Walsh, although he's 2 wheels in the grass, manages to hold on to it, and thank goodness for that, because there is not much space for error there.
Yeah, when you get on the grass here, this isn't quite like the way it is in iRacing with VIR. You get a little bit of control, and it can kind of help you a little bit because it might take some of the sting out of the heat that's in the tires, but honestly, don't drive on the grass. It's not going to bend well.
And Chris Braun looks like he maybe went wide at turn 3. Oh, no, he actually hit the wall, it looks like. So the 258's had some problems. He's got the car going, but doesn't look like it's hurt him enough that he's had to retire it, or at least immediately head into pit lane. Meanwhile, with Chan still on the back of Pies is now regrouped, and he's got Chris Walsh in his crosshairs. And this was a fantastic run for that 14. He's going to start to reel him in, and immediately Walsh knows it. He stays defensive down into the corner. That'll give him the inside, and then the desirable outside too, coming off the chicane. If he can just hold on, ooh, almost coming together between them, and there's that momentum.
Yeah, getting the power down at the right point right there. We were talking before the race, before the broadcast here, about how you want to set the car up in physical position to your opponent there. He did that absolutely perfectly. I would expect nothing less. That was beautiful placement of the car.
Try to get the over-under as he forced Walsh to defend into turn 1. Didn't work out. I saw a little duck of the nose as Jordan Dyer thought about something on Arthur Chan, then realized that was a bad idea into turn 3. So they stay single file, but man, this is backed up. Walsh now leads Pies, Chan, Dyer, Minkler, Peterson. It goes back to Huth in 9th.
Yeah, Huth is back there. Here we're on board with Peterson. Taking a look as we come up into this really nice, I love turn 6 here because it really takes away or gives you confidence that you shouldn't have if you don't know the track. Because coming out into turn 7 right there, Ross had mentioned a little bit about it when we were in the break there, where you come through, it has that beautiful banking in 6, and then you come up to 7, and the track goes flat, and it's a much tighter turn. It'll catch you off guard, and I see a lot of, we'll say, less experienced drivers find their way up in there, and then off into the grass, and sometimes just kind of rubbing off some of the paint on the left side of the car, leaving it on the wall there.
I always found it a really frustrating turn to try and nail for me, but so rewarding when you get it right. Meanwhile, Walsh is still rebuffing Chris Pies, even though he's been basically breathing down his neck for the last lap and a half. Arthur Chan's still in there as well. They're finally putting some distance on Dyer, so that's breaking the train up at least a hair for the time being, but I'm sure the slipstream will start to reel all that back in. We'll find out soon enough because they're already up to turn 5. But I got to give credit to Walsh. I thought with this many cars involved, surely someone's going to be able to do something on him. But man, this has been a great defense.
Walsh has been doing a nice job. He snuck through there. And like I was saying, when we were watching him way back in 4th place, he was in the catbird seat. He was sitting there waiting for those guys to make a mistake. And he got, I believe, both passes in the space of about half a lap because he was just in the right spot. And it's experience. This is where experience falls into play. This is watching a driver who really has a lot of laps under his belt. He knows how to push the car, when to push the car. Ross, how have you seen things like people's experience develop over time where they wouldn't be able to do that and suddenly maybe there was this light bulb moment go off where they were able to pull a move like we saw there?
For sure, there's. I'm watching here, and I'm thinking about Arthur Chan kind of going to school on the guys in front of him here, and I think he's doing a brilliant job of showing some patience. Oh yes, and look at how that patience are paying off here. So I think there's a great example of he's learning a ton from following these guys and seeing how they're positioning their cars. That's going to pay off for him in the future.
Well, that one was my fault. I just said that Chris was doing such a great job with defense, and then he cracks under the pressure within a lap going through turn 3. That cost him about 3 spots. He's down to 6th, and Chan and Dyer now 4th and 5th in front of him. Back onto the back stretch they go as we jump over to Robert Rose, who turn 6 is an ambitious place sometimes. He feels ambitious enough, but he can't quite find the grip behind him. An attack down into turn 7 as well. That was Brody in the orange machine, and a loss of grip unfortunately catches out Rose and Braun. Braun just bumps into the back of him.
Yeah, that's the downside of trying to use that curb, is if you don't have the car set up right to make that transition up on there, you can get a little bit too far out, catch that grass, and, well, you're going to get passed by 2 cars like we just saw.
Well, thankfully that didn't go any worse, because I'm sure that could have been highly disruptive if he had hit him any harder. Meanwhile, trying to cut back underneath, Trey Drawhorn also involved. That's Chris Braun just in front of him. Remember, he was the one that hit the back of Robert Rose. Let's hope that he doesn't have much damage on the nose.
Yeah, and if he does, he's going to have a big Speed Secrets transfer on the nose here. So nice little plug for you there, Ross.
Yeah, nicely done there, Chris. He got a brilliant run off of turn 7, but just didn't have any place to go with it.
Really did not. And, well, it's not over, though, because it looks like Trey's trying to make use of what has fallen in his lap now as they come through turn 5. Great exit here from the silver and black of the 395, but another defense from Chris Braun trying to prevent anything into turn 6. Will this make him vulnerable into 7, though? Nope, they're both going to go back to the racing line.
Yeah, I think Chris needed to listen in on the broadcast when Ross and I were talking about hitting that inside curb right there, coming out of turn or coming through turn 5. I think that kind of upset the car a little bit. He did the commitment. He did exactly what Ross was saying and commit to it. It's the only way he was able to stay there without getting passed, because I got to say, Drawhorn was licking his chops when he saw that happen.
I think the drivers are pretty eager here today, as we only saw, I want to say, 1 or 2 retirements in the first race. This one, we are already at 4, and it has been gobbling them up as we come back to our top runners now, plunging down the hill. We're on board with Walsh just behind Dyer in 5th place. This is spread out slightly compared to what we saw before. It hasn't really gone away completely, Ross, but these guys have been dealing with some incredible pressure amongst each other.
That's the thing that's most impressive about this, is how they're managing this, and knowing that in a sim, you've got a little bit less visibility than you do in real life. I think, again, clean racing, but we're gonna see some action going down into turn 10 here now.
Yep, side by side. And it looks like, well, that winds up going to Walsh in the end. Dyer having to give back sixth place. So that's going to put him back into the top 5, but he's got a ways to go to get back up to Chris Pies, who he initially lost that spot from. Pies actually racing GT4 cars in the real world right now in the WRL. So he's had his hands full, not just here in the virtual world, but out there racing the real thing.
Yeah, the GT4s are a really good car in the WRL. I've enjoyed coaching some people and doing some laps and putting down some reference times for folks at tracks around the country. Great series, lots of fun. I really enjoy having that opportunity for a lot of people who wouldn't necessarily have the contacts to get into some of the other the other pro racing leagues that are out there.
Sweet.
I've actually had a chance to race with him in WRL, and I agree. WRL is a great series. Lots of seat time and lots of time to practice dealing with the pressure that you were mentioning before.
He's not the only one. Walsh also racing in that series. Interestingly, with 2 different Porsches. So having to jump back and forth, I'm not sure how drastic that is, but probably at least a fair bit of similarities. And it seems to be serving him relatively well. He's still in the top 5. Actually finished with, I believe, a 4th in the previous race this evening. So just one more to at least match that.
Yeah, I've had some fun bouncing back and forth between 2 different classes of cars in WRL. Back when there was a GP4, I drove a GP4 and we won, and I drove a GP2 and we came in second. So I had a very busy weekend that weekend, but yeah, I was smiling the whole time.
I can imagine. I would be just simply getting to be in the car, let alone 2 different ones over the course of the weekend. And ooh, this is a pretty decent run here from Arthur Chan. Thought maybe he would try it because he's not had too many good opportunities to really attack on Pies, and almost wonder if he's got to try and take them when they come. Let's see if it's still the strength of the 14 off the corner of 7. Yes, it is. So Arthur probably not going to be able to do it here. Just can't seem to follow on that loud pedal. He's going to pull in slightly under the slipstream. Let's see if he's ambitious enough to try and do it. I would like to do a through the field if he'll let us have a chance, and thankfully he will as he decides to back out of it. So let's take an opportunity then to look at our top 10 real quick and then head to the latter half with Michael, because we, of course, have the time to bring you the Midway Race report, presented by Porsche. Wyatt Gooden is leading once again, his first time this evening in this series. And you wouldn't know it by the way he has been dominating through this field. And he's already got 8 seconds over the nearest competitor. That is Cameron Martineau, currently behind him in the 98. Cameron was the one fighting with Chris Pies in that first race that came to blows that we mentioned a little bit earlier, but seems to have really managed to distance himself this time, and that's made his life a whole lot easier. Chris Pies, as we talked about, a very avid real-world racer as well as in the sim, and quite fast in that number 14, but has had to look in the mirrors a lot so far in this second race of the evening. Arthur Chan behind him, the first of the the PCA pros, rather, I should say, in that number 50 and making a real run of it, trying to get on the overall podium, and I think there's still a realistic shot for him to be able to do that. After that, it'll be Chris Walsh back in 5th, who was hovering behind Martineau and Pies in the first race, but has slipped up in this one, and that's what put him behind Arthur Chan. We'll just have to wait and see if he can get back involved to try and get to that 4th position. Jordan Dyer is in P6 behind them. Now, I think he was helped out by a lot of the racing that we saw before, because he was right on top of them much earlier in the first half of this event, but since then seems like he's been dropping off piece by piece. He's already almost a full second behind them. Leif Peterson sits then in the 7th position. He unfortunately wrecked out of the first race on his own, just slipped up in turn 5, wound up hitting the wall, couldn't finish it from there, unfortunately. Rich Minkler sits in the 8th position. in the number 76. He's got some work to do to get up to Leif Peterson, about a second distance there you can see right now between them. But the good news is he's relatively safe right now from ninth place, which is Jim Huth back in the 412, who has started this race exactly where he sits now. So nothing lost, nothing gained, Michael, and that will take us off to the latter half of the field.
All right, looking in P10, we've got Joe Stiefel here. Got a nice little gap he's trying to build up, but looks like Travis Brody does not want that to be there for long, as our P11, Travis Brody, is kind of trying to close in here on Joe. Doing a nice job out of the Palmetto region. Going back one more to P12, we've got Chris Braun there. Braun has been showing us that beautiful Speed Secret logo on the back of the car there, doing a nice job doing Ross proud as he gets past, it looks like, but that's going to be Rick Reinsberg trying to make that run right there in the 72. So this little pack here is doing really nice racing. It's enjoyable to watch these guys. Following those guys in P15 is going to be Robert Rose. Did I skip some? I think I skipped Trey. There was a whole bunch of passing going on there. Sorry, Trey. Trey Drawhorn in P13 just found his way up there. P14 would be Rick Reinsberg now. A little bit of shuffling going through the field here. This is a really good little pack of racing going on. P15, Robert Rose. We watched him a little bit earlier, trying to make that beautiful run down the back straightaway. Couldn't quite pull that off. He started in 20th, up 5 positions out of the Shenandoah region. P16 is going to be Corey Friedman. Corey had some troubles early on and did not show well in that first race, had a very early incident in that race. He is out of the Palmetto region. Also started P21 up to P16. Back in P17 is going to be Jacob Schum. Jacob, we're used to seeing a little bit farther up front out of the Carolinas region. He's not had a great race here, but you would think he would do well at this track considering how close it is to the Carolinas region. We have 3 cars. We have Talkie, Eisenring, and Kostanak, who have DNF'd for this race, who had incidents early on that kept them from being able to finish.
And this concludes tonight's race update, brought to you by Porsche. Thank you very much for them for sponsoring the season out here and giving us these mid-race reports. But back up to Arthur Chan. He's still got pies in his windscreen. He's also got Chris Walsh now filling his mirrors on top of things. So the 99's back on the horse and is making life difficult for the number 50, trying to demote him another and push that PCA Pro car a little bit farther down.
Yeah, this is a really good race building up here. Arthur Chan is... He's definitely, what do they say, punching above his weight, you would expect. But honestly, I've said it before, I'll say it again. Just because someone's a pro doesn't mean they're going to be faster than an amateur racer. The biggest difference is access. It's not what you know, it's not who you know, it's who knows you. And a lot of times, those of us who are in the pro ranks are only there because somebody knew us and wanted to put us in that car and get us into that race and show off their company or show off their car or show something off. That was the thing, and just happened to be in the right place at the right time. This talent we're looking at right here out of Arthur Chan, he is not punching above his weight. He is definitely punching in the class he should be in. He is racing like an absolute pro.
Well, and that's one thing I hope that sim racing broadcasts such as this help guys like Arthur Chan get to do, is start to garner a little bit of attention from those that need to be in the know of their talent as we jump back to Peterson, Minkler, and Huth now. And I'm kind of curious, Ross, with your years and training all kinds of talents coming up, have you started to see that sim racing is really starting to shine the light on a few hidden talents?
Absolutely, and in 2 ways. And I think, the first way is obviously it's a great training tool, and what Arthur is learning. And I keep looking at him there, and I kind of go, I think he's showing some patience. He's being really smart. He could take a lunge at a position there, but I think it wouldn't pay off. And I think he's smart enough to know that. So he's taking his time. So I think the training aspect is fantastic, but the second part of it, as you say, is the awareness. And Before this series, I didn't know much about Arthur Chan. Now I do. Am I going to be watching out for him? And would I give a nod towards, if somebody says, hey, who should I be looking at? Would I be saying, hey, you need to look at this guy? Yes, I would. So the awareness that's coming out of this series is fantastic.
Unfortunately, looks like Jacob Schum caught the awareness of the stewards a little bit. I do see, yes, a black flag. Unfortunately for him, making an incident in turn 3. Unfortunately for him, he was many laps down, so he got involved in racing cars that were not on the same lap as him, and I'm sure that really didn't make many people happy at all, causing some damage to other few people's nights. Meanwhile, on the back stretch for the likes of Pies, Chan, and Walsh. Walsh not with the greatest of exit there out of turn 7, but Chan looking much better. Will he finally get aggressive here, or is he content with this 4th place? Yeah, still not doing much to try and go by Chris Pies. At what point, Michael, does he really need to bite the bullet and actually make a go of things?
Well, he needs to time it. So when we were talking before the broadcast and you were asking about how do they make that pass down there, how effective is the draft? And I was saying 0.3, you're going to catch up to the bumper. He was at 3.5 coming off of the corner number 7. And it wasn't quite enough. He got right up on that bumper. If he gets down to maybe 0.2, quarter second, I think he can get side by side. Now, is Chris going to give him that inside bit? Absolutely not. Chris is too good of a racer. He's going to hold on to that inside. He's going to make Arthur hold on to that outside. Then we're going to see an excellent battle. So here we go. Time to set this up. This is exactly what we were talking about. Right now, he's still about 3.5 off of Chris's bumper. I don't think Arthur is going to have a chance to be able to close this up enough to get side by side. But I've been wrong before, and I'm willing to be wrong again.
We'll see. He's starting to gain. He's taking a little bit of a look, just kind of showing his nose, but then decides against it now that they are into the braking of 10A and 10B. So, there's a good exit, though, out of Arthur. I've seen passes maybe sometimes into turn 1, but if he isn't brave enough to do it into turn 10, got to think he's not going to do it into 1. And no, it looks like I was overestimating as he starts to fall back.
Well, there's also, as we were talking about earlier, patience. Patience is the root of everything. And a broadcast not too long ago, Ross and I talked about the 3 Ps. And I think Arthur's doing a beautiful job of implementing the 3 Ps, the first of which is patience. Very astutely noted from Ross there when we were on board with him. But patience is the key. And when you have that patience, you get this precision. Watch how precisely he goes through here. He is not making mistakes. He is calm. And then that 3rd P is coming in, which is pester the ever-living, insert your word here, out of the guy in front of you or behind you. And that is going quite well as he is at 0.28. This could get exciting as we watch these guys work their way down the straightaway here. There is enough here. I think he might be able to get a little bit of overlap going into the braking zone.
This could be what he's been looking for. Once again, just showing himself slightly, but no, it goes back to the racing line.
That's the 3rd P right there. That's what he's doing. He is getting in his head. He's like, Chris, I got you, buddy. I am on you. I have got your number.
Well, eventually he's going to have to actually execute here. We'll see when he does. The other thing I'm wondering, we have to remember, this is an open setup series as well, Michael. I wonder if maybe Pies has a little bit of less wing?
Could be. We could be looking at rake differences in the cars. That's a trick you can do to get the car to rotate. You want that back end up a little higher, but you can also do that with the bars. But you get that back end lower, you're still going to get a good downforce at slower speeds. But when the car starts to go faster, the rear end squats down and you end up with less wing and you're able to pull away.
I'm not sure why, but I saw Leif Peterson give 2 spots away. He handed it over to Huth and Minkler, and I didn't see any sort of slowdown penalty or anything. So I'm not sure if just because of his wreck earlier on and he's not involved in maybe any sort of championship hunt, he decided to let those 2 kind of do their own thing, because he was leading them comfortably, Michael, and he just slowed out of turn 1 for no apparent reason.
I wonder if he got a little wiggly or something. Maybe he was having some internet connection issues. I've had that happen where you don't necessarily see it. Like I generally race in VR, and that helps a lot with the vision thing we were talking about earlier, is I can look around. But sometimes, just like your computer screen will do it, the VR screen will do it just as well, where it just jitters and you get like 3 frames a second for about 5 seconds. And then you hope you're not finding yourself in a wall, and you recover and go from there. But that'll definitely slow you down for a good half a lap.
Well, we're back to that fight once again. This is for the last step on the podium. For those wondering what's ahead of them, because we haven't been showing them, Wyatt Gooden and Cameron Martineau are still first and second. They're not really doing anything much of interest right now. It's about 11-second lead for Wyatt and 6-second lead for Martineau over Chris Pies. And it's been essentially that for some time now. So out of turn 7 and onto the back stretch, we fly with now less than a quarter of the final race left to go. Chan still at about those 3.5 tenths behind Chris and picking up speed. The good thing for him is that it seems like Chris Walsh hasn't really been as much of a bugbear in his side, at least up to this point. This time, maybe a little bit more serious of a look. It looked like he was poking his nose farther out on Chris. I'm not sure if that was just my eyes deceiving me, but that he usually wasn't showing himself that much.
I was watching on board, and yeah, he was trying to show himself a bit. That'll do 2 things. One, it'll give you the arrow you need to get into the brakes a little bit later, just another half a car length deeper. But it also puts those nice bright headlights into the side mirror of the guy you're chasing. So that's a double-edged sword there. He is trying to get into Chris's head, the Chris in front of him. The Chris behind him, he's already got in his head, because I think, honestly, it looks like to me, Chris Walsh, he overdid his tires trying to get back up to this group. Did a brilliant job making his way back up here, but I think he's just out of tire at this point. But here we are, back on board. We are on board with Pipes, with Chan closing this up behind. Now, right now, coming into turn 6, there's about 4 tenths, coming down to about 3 tenths. We go into the braking zone of turn number 7. Can he close it up any more to get through there? Oh, wait a minute, I was on the wrong turn.
And they also had a big slide out of Chris Walsh coming off of 7 as well. So you might notice he's farther back. He had to catch the car out of that 90-degree right-hander. So that's why he's now suddenly about a full second behind. Again, that relieves any pressure on Arthur Chan, so that he has to only focus forward here, as he has been doing for quite some time now. Interestingly, he's up 1, Pies is down 1, Martineau's up 1, Walsh is down 1, so very little change there in this higher part of the field. That is in stark contrast to the mid-pack, where Travis Brody is up 8 and Trey Drawhorn is up 6.
Yeah, good job from both of those drivers, doing beautifully, just nose to the grindstone. Let other people go off track. The easiest pass you can make is when the other guy has to go off track, goes off track, or gets a slow down, or has to make a pit stop. Those are the easy ones. The tough ones are the ones we're watching up front, where we're watching Chris, Arthur, and Chris have their little battle. But right here, we're on board with Jim Huth in P8. Jim, also one of those drivers that we watch fairly often. He is up 1 position over Leif Peterson. Leif Peterson is down 1 position just behind him. I'm sure Leif wants that position back.
We'll see if he can catch him in the first place, though, as he rides behind the red and white of Rich Minkler. Oh, but Rich was way off the course there, dipping his tires into the grass. I know you said to use that exit curve, but I think that was a bit much.
Yeah, that was a bit much, but watch here. Watch the positioning of these guys. Watch how I think Minkler needs to kind of start to fade left here. He does not. He holds onto that right side. Not the right position to be coming down through here, and that makes that pass pretty easily done. I think he just owned up to that mistake, realized there was no way he had to defend it, and he's just going to hold on to that position where he is.
Jimmy up to 7th place now, so 2 positions gained for that 412 machine, and with not much time left to go. So that was good timing on his part to be able to capitalize when that erupted in front of him. That did slow them down just slightly, as Leif Peterson did catch up in that 9:13 and is now starting to creep in, so that really helped that Gulf liveried car.
Yep, the Gulf livery car coming back through here. He's doing very well to hold on to the tail end of this. He had fallen back just a few minutes ago, but Peterson, not one to give up. We've seen him all through the season doing a beautiful job trying to keep towards the pointy end of this pack, and I think he wants to get back up there now.
I've been calling Leaf in races for probably a good 5 years now, I think. It's been a while, and the 913 has been putting in a lot of time in the iRacing sim and is showing it with his speed, especially here in the PCA, with the ability for him to race with the cream of the crop. And then it gets even harder to try and find your way up to the top of that level as well, as we can see as we come down with now 3 minutes left to go. And actually, wow, Gooden is so far ahead. He's almost halfway through the lap. So we're actually still a little less to go here, because that's going to be 2 laps at the line, maybe?
Yeah, he's just getting faster and faster. He's just pulled a 19.8. Nobody else is in the 19s. He's pulled several laps in the 19s, at least 2. So his best lap was a 19.843. His last lap, 19.871. So he's just found his nice little groove here, and Wyatt's just off having a good time. Meanwhile, Cameron Martineau also doing beautifully here. He's got quite a gap in front of him, 14 seconds up to Wyatt, but a nice comfortable 5.5 back to Chris Pites.
It just crossed at 2:30, so yeah, that'll be 2 laps to go then for Wyatt Gooden. That's just enough time to get in there before he gets another lap. So there's Martineau on your screen. In the meantime, I'm going to put a lap on Rick Reinsberg, who's just out there kind of circulating, I think, ready to see the checkered flag. He's second to last on the field right now, only Jacob Schum behind him. Sounds like Walsh and Chan, though, are the ones that are now fighting with one another. What happened to Arthur? He's a 2.5 behind Chris.
It looked to me like he just kind of decided to give it up. I didn't see an incident in particular, but I think he was just trying to back it off a little bit, preserve some tires for the end. He may have backed off a little bit too much, because right now we have Chris Walsh sitting there in that catbird seat again. We saw him here at the beginning of the race in P4. Well, actually now he's in P5. With Wyatt Gooden way out in front, but this is a very similar position to what he was in before.
Ooh, Peterson got a spot over Minkler after Rich went off at turn 3, was able to keep it from going worse and got it back on the track, but was not able to retain that 8th spot. So move Leaf back up into P8, and there's the white flag now for Wyatt Gooden across the start-finish line. 1 more to go. Only showed up for the last one, but he is fashionably late here.
Yeah, there was a time in a different league where Wyatt showed up. We were driving TCR cars, and I beat him. That was the first time and the last time I have ever come close to beating Wyatt. And I think actually he had some kind of damage that happened to his car in that race. But man, is he putting on a show today.
Speaking of which, Minkler tried to repass Peterson into the final chicane, was not able to get it done, so he falls back in line behind him. Look at the beautiful glint of the orange sun coming off the pavement here in Atlanta as the trees, the shadows get a little bit longer here late, of course, later in the year, just into the fall now as we've left summer behind. But it is going to be beautiful for this number 18 car, not because of the leaves changing, not because of the feel of the air, but because he has swept this evening for the last race of the PCA Pro Series. Wyatt Gooden is your winner.
Yeah, nicely done by the former TDI Cup in iRacing, TDI Cup driver. That's where I kind of found myself when I started out in iRacing. I love driving that TDI Cup, but going back here, looking at Martineau coming around that last little combination of corners. Martineau, fantastic driver himself, coming in P2 today.
And Pies rounds out the podium. It's an all-pro racer podium with Arthur Chan still getting that 4th overall and winning the PCA Pro. So King Arthur for the number 50 today, topping that class.
I like that. I every once in a while you find a nice moniker that sticks for someone. I've had Mr. Sneaky before, but I think King Arthur applies very well today.
Indeed, as this is Trey Drawhorn, and he's not going to have the most positions gained. That will go to Travis Brody, who wound up 10th. But Trey, oh no, Trey's losing positions. He's sputtering to the line, and that's not the way you want to end the season, but he will at least get to the checkered flag thanks to the fact that it's downhill.
Yeah, downhill helps a lot there. I think he still ended up losing a position, though, unfortunately. Still up quite a few positions. That was Trey Drawhorn up 5 on the day.
So Wyatt Gooden, as I mentioned, your winner with Cameron Martineau, a distant 18 seconds behind him. Credit to Chris Pies. He seemed to catch up towards the end. It was 6 seconds, remember I mentioned before? Cut it down to 4. Not sure if Cameron was just managing the gap, but Chris at least kept him somewhat honest to take that podium. Arthur Chan, as I mentioned, the top of the PCA pros, but 4th overall, was ahead of a couple of our pros here. Chris Walsh just behind him, could not seem to keep up and pass him. Jordan Dyer wound up in 6th overall, but was 2nd in the PCA pros with Jim Huth, the last of the PCA pro podium there in 7th overall. Lee Peterson was P8 as Rich Minkler wound up 9th, losing that spot late on. And then Travis Brody rounds out your top 10, Michael.
In P11, it looks like we got Chris Braun still on the lead lap. Along with him is going to be Joe Stiefel, about a minute 2 back. Trey Drawhorn rolling down the hill there at the end to a P13. 1 lap back, we've got Rick Reinsberg with Corey Friedman. Robert Rose and Jacob Schum are 13 laps back. 27 for Grant Talke. I think he had some internet issues. And then Derwin Kostanak and Ed Eisenring, 28 and 29 laps back. P21, Lynn Wilson did not start.
So we'll hopefully get to chat with some of our drivers in a bit. We do still have Ross with us, and Ross, you were complimenting the clean racing and the skills there at the start. So do you think these guys have found the speed secrets?
I think they have. Like I said, it was brilliant racing. Always great racing at Road Atlanta, but this was pretty special stuff. I've watched a lot of Porsche races, and this is about as good as it gets.
I concur. This PCA series, the ladder system that they have formed has really been beautiful to watch because they have a ton of drivers. So you really do have to earn your way up to the echelon. And it shows in these guys. Ross, I really just was an absolute joy, and definitely want to keep in touch, not just here on the broadcast, because I mean, maybe I'll have to use some of your secrets because I'm definitely much better in the booth than I am out on the track. I can tell you that.
Anytime that I can give you some coaching, I'd be there for you. So
thanks, man. That was Ross Bentley of Speed Secrets, who has been with us all season here for the PCA Pro Series. Michael, man. You were talking about how good Wyatt is before we came on air, and I was already definitely aware because I've called races with him, but that was just a stomping that he put on.
And that was probably a mild stomping from the typical Wyatt Gooden stompings that I've been the victim of. Wyatt is one of those guys. He's fast in the sim. He's fast in real life. He has done a beautiful job of making it happen in both places. Some of us have issues. I mean, I am definitely faster in real life than I am in the sim. I wish I were faster. I just don't have the feel. But Wyatt is one of those guys. He has the feel. He's got the touch. There's this right setting in his steering wheel or something that has made him into what is often referred to as an alien. He is an actual real human being. I can confirm that, but his driving skill in the sim is just at another level. It is extraterrestrial.
Yeah, for those not familiar, that's the actual term that we use in sim racing is we refer to them as aliens just because of that unreal. I love the touch on his steering wheel. Is that the new he has better equipment than me?
Probably not, because I mean I've got a Fanatec DD1. I've got a nice Fanatec Porsche wheel. I've got hoisting felt. I've got all the great stuff that you're supposed to have. Pimax, so I've got a wide view on my VR. So I have very few excuses. I have to rely on, my computer glitched as my only excuse.
That's the new little brother. I think my controller is broken.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. That's our version of a cut tire is, I got a little bit of a glitch on my VR. So I couldn't pull out the corner as I like to.
Well, I do see. It looks like we might have Cameron Martineau double checking to see if we have a chance to talk to our second place finisher in race number 2. Cameron, welcome to the booth. It was a second place and I believe a third in the first race, but that second one looked a lot more calm than the first one. You and Chris look like you guys had quite the ding-dong battle.
Yeah, the first race was absolutely on the limit for sure. I knew what was at stake tonight, and I was willing to, put it on the line, and it made for a very tense race 1. I mean, Chris, I've got tons of respect for Chris. That was a lot of fun, very tense. He made me sweat, and second race was a bit easier. I talked with my teammate. Chris Walsh at the beginning there. We had a plan, and once I saw that Wyatt was gonna check out like he did in the first race, I had to pounce, and then hope that Chris was gonna follow him through, and that really was my best chance to maximize the result and give myself personally any chance at securing the championship. But hats off to Chris Pies and for an amazing season.
Yeah, you gave him a run for his money. But, I mean, how do you manage operating at a level like this in this series? It takes so much. But at the same time, you're doing the 24-hour esports series with Hardpoint Motorsports, the Porsche Esports Carrera Cup. You've got the ROG Invitational Esports event, the SRO 8 Hours of Indy coming up. How do you juggle all this and still stay this competitive?
Honestly, Joe, that is definitely something I'm going to have to evaluate in the off season. It definitely puts a strain on my prep time. I have to plan out, what I'm going to prioritize for the week. During the season, I had a lot of different things. So, of course it was not optimal, but I try to do what I can with the time that I have, and, basically prioritize what I need to focus on. And tonight was definitely a race that I was focusing on. I put a lot of that other stuff off to the side, and I can't be too mad about the prep I did for this race. But for sure the 4 points that I had at Sebring in the first round definitely came back to haunt me tonight. So that's the margins when you're competing at this high of a level.
Yeah, it's I like the pragmatic view that you've got on it, though. It sounds like you're just letting it roll off the duck's back. So regardless of top 3 in the championship and podiums here in the final race, this has got to be still a pretty high note to end on.
I mean, I'm still happy. We did what Chris Walsh and I did exactly what Hardpoint wanted us to do, and that was bring home the team championship. So I can't be too disappointed. I had one championship this year with the Rick Motec series, finishing second in the pro category in the PCA in the very first season of the Pro GT3 Cup is such an amazing feeling. And of course I'm a bit disappointed and frustrated, but hats off to Chris Pies. He deserves it. I drove my heart out this season. I can't be too mad, and don't you guys worry. I'll be back next season stronger than ever.
No doubt about that. That was Cameron Martineau, who finished second here in race 2, and unfortunately second in the championship behind Chris Pies, who Michael has caught up with, who is also on the podium twice this evening.
So, Chris, having raced with you, it is absolutely no surprise to me that you appear to be the champion for this season. Congratulations.
Thanks, Michael. Appreciate it. Yeah, I think if my math is right, I think I just eked out Cameron. But the points race was so tight, and it's just demonstrative of the tight fighting that we had throughout the entire season. So, it was a tough season, probably my toughest in sim racing. But I have to give a round of applause to Cameron. I mean, he's a fighter, and that was some of the most fun racing I've had in a long time.
So you let him get out there like 5 or 6 seconds. Was it just a game? You planned on reeling him back in there at the end, or were you really just trying to play with Arthur? Or sorry, we've changed the name. He's now King Arthur behind you.
No, what happened was when Chris Walsh got by me along with Cameron, Chris did a heck of a job playing rear gunner for Cameron, and by the time I was able to get around Walsh because of a mistake, Cameron had already moved out 3 seconds, and at that point I had lost the draft, and I knew where I was in the point standings, and so I just focused on driving a clean race. Big kudos to King Arthur for not sticking his nose in some places. I think he was content with following me around, so it was just kind of a cruise at that point. I was comfortable where I was.
So we saw Arthur come up behind you a few times, and he did show the lights several times going into 10A, and I think once maybe going into 7, it looked like he might have shown the lights around there. Was it any threat, or did you feel pretty comfortable that he was just going to sit there behind you?
I felt pretty comfortable. There was multiple laps in a row where he definitely had a run on me going into 10A, and he backed off it and got out of the gas right before the brake zone. So after a couple of laps of that, I knew he wasn't gonna go for it unless I made a terrible mistake, and so I could focus on my line and drive. So it was relatively stress free, even though it may have looked pretty close from the outside.
All right, so no pressure, but look into your crystal ball here. By how many points are you going to win next season?
I don't want to put the cart before the horse on that one with the next season. We've got folks like some other pros that have now joined the league, and we've got some I think some old names coming back out of retirement, I'd say. So I think season 9 is going to be really crowded up front, and I'm going to have to do everything I can just to try to keep up with them. So I think I've got my work cut out for me, to say the least.
Well, you're going to have fun, and you're going to put on a great show like you always do. Who do you have to thank for the 3rd place today and your championship for the season?
Big thanks to ACI Motorsports. Thanks for letting me be part of the team and represent you guys here in the virtual world. Good luck when you guys go out to Road Atlanta as part of Petit Le Mans. I'll be rooting for you and be watching for you. So let's go out there and have a good finish to the season. I'll be rooting for you.
Well, that was Chris Peitz, our season champion apparent. And unfortunately, we don't have a chance to talk to King Arthur. I was so hoping we'd get a chance to. But with that, I'm going to toss it back to Joe.
Yeah, I'd love to get to chat with Arthur. I'm sure we will at some point later, since he regularly competes here in the PCA. But that, before we close up, will bring us to one more reminder that the PCA Sim Racing social media offers in-race reports, breaking news, and announcements through Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. To subscribe, key in the platform name and add /PCA Sim Racing. Now, we'll see you, of course, for Series 9, which kicks off October 5th, 9:25 p.m. Eastern, live here on Podium Esports. Thank you so much once again to our sponsor Porsche, and a big thank you to the steering committee at PCA Sim Racing. Also, huge thanks to our team tonight, Michael, Ryan, and Dougie, as well as a special thank you to Ross Bentley for joining us up in the booth all night. Also, none of this is possible without those behind the scenes at Podium Esports, Ryan Bauer, Gary Sexton, and John Theodore. Thank you so much for watching tonight's broadcast of PCA Sim Racing, sponsored by Porsche. I'm Joe Peak, and I'll see you on the track.